All right, now we got Bernie Sanders. Let's do it. So Bernie Sanders weighed in on Russia's invasion of Ukraine. And, you know, I mean, some people were curious what he'd say, for good reason. I mean, Jeremy Corbyn went on a much softer line in regards to the invasion. He immediately brought up NATO, which on the one hand is reasonable, but, you know, I do also think it's important to be clear and say that I condemn an invasion of a sovereign country. That should be obvious, right? Well, Bernie Sanders went hard in the paint, perhaps in a way that's unexpected to some people. So take a look at this. Senator Bernie Sanders. So let me read the tweet part first. Vladimir Putin's latest invasion of Ukraine is an indefensible violation of international law, regardless of whatever false pretext he offers. There has always been a diplomatic solution to the situation. Tragically, Putin appears intent on rejecting it. News, Sanders' statement on U.S. response to Russia. Vladimir Putin's latest invasion of Ukraine is an indefensible violation of international law, regardless of whatever false pretext he offers. There has always been a diplomatic solution to the situation. Tragically, Putin appears intent on rejecting it. The United States must now work with our allies and the international community to impose serious sanctions on Putin and his oligarchs, including denying them access to the billions of dollars they have stashed in European and American banks. The U.S. and our partners must also prepare for a worse scenario by helping Ukraine's neighbors care for refugees fleeing this conflict. Finally, in the longer term, we must invest in a global green energy transition away from fossil fuels, not only to combat climate change, but to deny authoritarian petrostates the revenues they require to survive. Okay, so the one thing I'm surprised by is that he didn't, because even Biden has said this a number of times. Biden has said, we're not putting U.S. troops on the ground. And he was very clear, repeatedly stated in his various speeches on this, I think trying to get the message across to Putin. We are acting defensively. We are acting defensively. Don't think it's offense. We're acting defensively. So I'm surprised Bernie didn't say the thing about we shouldn't put U.S. troops on the ground. That'll escalate the situation. You know, we don't want to flirt with World War III. We want to find a way to de-escalate. But outside of that one line, I'm not surprised that Bernie said this stuff. So the one thing I just told you I was surprised by, but there's one other thing I think he should have said. Because, I mean, he's right. You have to condemn an invasion of a sovereign country, and that's exactly what's happening here with what Russia's doing. But if you watch Vladimir Putin's speech, as I'm going to keep bringing up, and I implore all of you to watch the speech, because I don't want you to take my word for it. I want you to hear it straight from the horse's mouth. He says it himself. When he lays out basically why he's doing what he's doing, half of the speech was about NATO expansionism and about how Russia feels under threat by the West because NATO has kept expanding closer and closer to them over time. But then the other half of the speech was about historic grievances against Ukraine, this idea that the Soviet Union built Ukraine. Ukraine is in debt to the Soviet Union. We gave them everything and asked nothing of them. My stupid predecessors gave Ukraine the option to be in the Soviet Union, but pull out whenever they want with no strings attached. We built their culture. We made them what they are, and then they turned their back on us. So half of the rationale is nominally defensive. Hey, NATO's expanding and we feel under threat. And then the other half, the rationale, is very clearly offensive and very clearly is yearning for a time of Russian empire. So what I'll say about Bernie's statement is the same thing I said about Biden's statement. I agree with the slate of sanctions Biden did because they're proportional, they deter without escalating. But there should have been some line about, look, if you just say Ukraine is not part of NATO and is not going to be part of NATO, well, then you take away Putin's excuse. So then if he continues to invade, the U.S. gets to rally the world to our side and say, see, it wasn't really about NATO. We just gave him what he wanted. We just said, okay, fine, Ukraine's not going to be part of NATO. Your move now, Vlad. Because if he still invades after that fact, then we know that that was more the cover story than the reality. And look, my guess, 65 to 70% chance he still continues to invade. That's my guess. Which means a very big portion of why he's invading, it has nothing to do with NATO, and it has to do with wanting to reestablish the Russian Empire. Some semblance of it. Little bits and pieces here and there, whatever he can get away with. And so, I don't know why nobody's making that obvious point. Because there's no downside to it. Zelensky said it's not going to happen. It's a dream for us to be part of NATO now. Our NATO bid has stalled. Other NATO members don't want Ukraine in, and they've been open about that. they're not in now. They're not going to get in. Why not just go out there and say, okay, NATO's not going to be in it, or Ukraine's not going to be in NATO. And then you undercut any argument Putin has. And then you even make it so India and China, who are riding the fence on this, even they'll side with the US. And you have a united world against what Vladimir Putin is doing here. So I don't know why even Bernie's not saying that obvious thing. There are a lot of lefties who are really angry at this Bernie statement. I'm not that angry at it. I really don't think it's difficult to state the obvious thing here, which is you do not invade sovereign nations, regardless of the, wheelbarrow of grievances that you have with you. You don't do it. I condemn it every time the U.S. does it, so of course I'm going to condemn it when another nation does it. So I don't think, I'm not mad at Bernie for this. I think it's overall a pretty reasonable statement. But number one, I would have added a line about no U.S. boots on the ground. And then number two, I would have, if I was Bernie, I would have expected him to have something about negotiation and diplomacy, and the potential path out is just admitting Ukraine's not going to be in NATO, and then therefore cutting off any sort of rationalization or justification that Putin thinks he has. Because if he continues to invade, then you get to say to the world, and you'd be correct in saying it wasn't really about NATO. See? So anyway, there you have it. Not mad at Bernie. I know there are a lot of lefties mad at Bernie. You shouldn't be. But yes, I wish he added one or two more lines, and then it would have been a much better statement. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.